Y'all are. This is your buddy George Jones over at the Bergen Gun Range with my next installment on, hey, let's review an old 30 caliber carbine. So I want to take this gun apart and show how this guy was made. And this is a universal 30 caliber carbine. It's basically a knockoff of the M1 carbine manufactured by Universal Firearms in Hialeah, Florida, that's now out of business. So this is the first model that they manufactured starting in 1965. And what they did was over the years, as different parts became available or became not available, they made significant changes to the design of their 30 caliber carbine clone. Okay, so when they first came out, they manufactured this style. Now, what they did was they took the GI receivers that were available at the time and they ground off the U.S. military markings, the original manufacturer's markings, and polished it off and roll stamped their markings on it. This one says Universal Hialeah, Florida on it. And they ground off and put a new serial number on it and basically made it their gun. The lowers were not available at the time, the trigger groups, trigger housings, so they manufactured new ones in cast aluminum. Now later they actually manufactured them in plastic. And later they produced their own receivers when the receivers were no longer available. And those are the ones that you see that have got, they're drilled over here for a scope mount, okay? And they've got that big piece of plastic plug in the side of there to, you know, accommodate the gap in the stock that would accommodate the scope mount. This is the closest one to GI that the Universal ever produced. Now the barrel is not a GI barrel and it's remanufactured, but it's remanufactured more or less to military specification, you know, because they had the military op rod. They were able to get the op rod. And later they couldn't get the op rod anymore, so they started producing one made out of metal pressings and welding it together. This one has the GI style gas piston, lug, and castle nut and so forth in it. Whereas the later versions of it didn't have one operating rod and spring, it had two, which was really ludicrous and really hard to repair when it's broken and so forth. So that's the original Universal carbine. They started making these in 1965, and they produced them all the way up to the late 1970s. Okay? And as the parts changed, you know, as it got to where they couldn't get this GI part or that GI part, they simply manufactured their own parts and put guns together that way. We're going to try this gun out right now. This one was made about 1965, 66, 67, along in there. About 1962, the U.S. the military, the Department of Defense, decided to do away with 30 caliber carbines altogether. So, you know, there was a lot of parts on the market for Universal and Federal Ordnance and other organizations to get out there and try and produce 30 caliber carbines. Now let's look at this thing from a standpoint of its authenticity, how much it looks like a real one. This one's got a L sight on the back of it, World War II style L sight, and apparently it didn't fit the dovetail well because someone spot welded it in to keep it in there. Okay, the op rod is of the M2 style. The bolt is of the M2 style. The receiver is a reworked GI receiver. The trigger group is a cast milled aluminum. The safety is the flip style safety as opposed to the crossbolt safety. Someone has nicely put 3 notches in the stock to indicate that they shot 3 people with it. It has a GI butt plate and it fits nicely. It's got I don't know if it's original or repop or what, stock pouch on it, which looks pretty authentic. Looks real. Manufactured Kirkman, 1942. It says on the back of it. Got a khaki sling on it. Okay. Well, let's see if it shoots. See if it works. I've got a NRA small bore up down there. I've got some of my 30 caliber carbine reloads. These are the half jacket lead bullets. Let's see if it runs. This gun belongs to a reenactor, and I'm just looking to make sure it ain't got a blank plug in the end of it. Before we get started, let's make sure it ain't got a blank plug in the end of it. Nope, it doesn't have a blank plug in the end of it. All right then. Now we're good now. Magazine seat's nice. Let's see. Feeds in there good. Let's get us some ear mufflers on. See how it actually shoots with live ammunition in it. That ain't worth a hoot for me right there. Turn that around. Alright, now we're in business. Dead into the sun he shoots. Let's get over on short range. Let's take it off safe. All right, that's 5 on paper. Let's see if we can hit a steel. Apparently we can, yeah. Yep. Pick one up. Okay. Pick one up that time. There we go. One more. That's hot. That's a hot one. That's a hot one right there, buddy. Right down my shirt. All right, this guy shoots. All right, let's find out about it. All right, this is the straight story on this particular gun. I was getting into World War II reenacting pretty heavy, and I had a bolt-action rifle, which was okay. It was correct. I walked into my local gunsmith shop one day, and he had a barreled action for a 30 caliber carbine laying in the corner. This one. And I asked him about that carbine action. He said, well, the guy leaned it up on the back of a pickup truck and then backed over it. And the barrel had about a 15-degree curve in it. And I said, what are you going to do with it? I could build me a carbine off that. So I bought it from him for nothing. So I put gauges on the receiver, and the receiver was still straight. So I took it out to the machine shop where I hang out, and I put the action in the lathe. I put the receiver in the forejaw, and I took the muzzle and put it on the center and turned it slowly. And it turned kind of like this. So I moved the tool post over and nicked it at the high point where it swung by the post. And I took a 10-pound lead hammer and I laid that barrel up on the ways of the lathe on a lead block. I took a 10-pound lead hammer and whacked it, and it kind of straightened up. So I put it back on the lathe, run it again, and found my highest point in the swing, and give it another couple of whacks with the lead hammer and put it back on the lathe and ran it at a little bit higher speed, and it looked really straight. So then I proceeded to build a 30 caliber carbine on that barreled action. And I found the top cover one place, and he still had this, so I got this from him, the trigger group. The stock was all busted and the top cover was busted. The front band was gone, the front sight was gone. So I replaced all of those things through different sources and put a 30 caliber carbine together. And no way that thing would shoot straight. Not having a barrel that had been backed over with a pickup truck and then re-straightened with a lead hammer. No way that guy would work right. So I blank adapted it so it would shoot Swanson's blanks, and shot it for probably years, 5-6 years, doing military reenacting, doing World War II reenacting with it. And one day we had a little thing over in Greene County called barbecue, private firepower shoot. And one of my cousins showed up with a bandolier of 30 caliber carbine ammunition and no 30 caliber carbine. And I had this thing in the trunk of the car. And I said, let's take the plug out of that thing and see just how terribly it shoots with live ammo. And we did. We loaded up a couple of magazines, and at 125 measured yards, we started shooting a 10-inch round steel target with it. And every time we shot at that target, it hit it. And I'm like, I'd have taken a lot better care of that gun if I knowed it shot that good. So that's the story behind this carbine. When my buddy in Indiana that we reenacted with that couldn't carry a live gun because of insurance purposes, when he turned 18 years old, I gave him this gun for his 18th birthday. And, because he could legally possess it then. And it's been a reenacting gun ever since, The value of this gun in the condition that it is in is probably about $250, just like it sits. you know, because it's a mess. But it works. That's the thing. Let's go down and see how it actually shoots. I don't know how it actually shoots after all these years. I put 5 in this paper target. Let's see what it looks like. Well, it seems to shoot. Yeah. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 in there, probably 5. One broke the line right there, it looks like, or one broke it, so it, yeah. That gun still shoots after all these years. And all this abuse. Yeah. Yeah, it looks like 4. Looks like I probably pulled 1. All right. So, it shoots. All right then. So I thought I'd bring this gun over and basically demonstrate the differences or between the various universal brand carbines. This will be the 4th video that I produced concerning the 30 caliber carbine rifle and its variants. And there's so many variants on the U.S. carbine and the various copies of it that have been made over the years that, you know, if I had them all in one place, I could probably produce 25 videos. You know, Universal made them 4 or 5 different variations over the years. Stock configurations, internal design configurations, and so forth as parts became available and disappeared again, you know, and things like that. Auto Ordnance manufactures a carbine. There are thousands of modified and boogered with GI carbines floating around. So anyway, that's about the size of that. Like a teacher, surefire, commentate, and subscribe. God bless everybody. Join the NRA, and we'll see you when we see you. Bye now.